Don't mind me, I'm just saging my house before my spirit guides come over.
I am a popular, sexy millionaire.
I got up at 1 a.m. today and I meditated for about 7 hours, so now it's time to pick my carrot card for the day. Ooh, you're not for everyone. It's so funny because the other day I was in the supermarket and this guy was just taking so long to pack his groceries. Like, he had his kids and he was like paying more attention to them than his groceries, and I was just like, you are so annoying. So this message is obviously for me to pass on to him. Oh, hi there. I'm just being all practical and spiritual, you know, doing my thing, manifesting, abundance, Krishna, yoga. Hey, welcome to the party. Today we're talking about practical spirituality. The reason that I decided to make this video is because when I got onto my spiritual journey about 8 years ago, I was really excited and I felt like there was a whole lot of bliss up ahead. Long story short, that's not the outcome that I stumbled upon. In a sense, spiritual practices and concepts are not too difficult to grasp, but when it comes to integrating and applying it to the world that we live in, like the Western world, it can be pretty tricky. And that's where people seem to trip up and they focus too much on spiritual stuff to the detriment of their financial health, their mental health, the relationships that they have to self and to other people. A term for that you might have heard is called spiritual bypassing. So that's where we end up kind of sabotaging other aspects of our lives under the guise of, you know, being spiritual. Now, my belief is that a good spiritual practice is one that supports us in taking aligned action so that we can thrive in all areas of our lives. On the outside, I live a pretty normal life aside from my hair. Some people think that's a bit weird, but other than that, if you look at me, I'm a pretty normal person, but I do embrace spirituality in my life in a big way, and it doesn't get in the way of me making money, making friends, and having a good time. My intention with this video is to highlight some of the pitfalls that I fell into and some of the insights that I've gathered along the way that have helped me to live what I consider to be a practically spiritual life. I'm confident that there will be plenty of people that disagree with a lot of what I have to share here. So of course, if anything here resonates with you, take it away. If it doesn't, that's okay, you can just leave it. For me, to consider the spiritual nature of the world is to consider what is beyond obvious and apparent to us. So, you know, it's the thing that you can't quite see. And our spiritual nature can inform the way that we go about doing other things in this world. So with the consideration of the spiritual nature of the world, you kind of realize that uncertainty is kind of everywhere, because things aren't as black and white as you once thought. There's more nuance. There's not necessarily a right and a wrong, and that can kind of melt your brain a little bit. So if we look at the world, things like science and education systems and linear job routes are intended to kind of eradicate uncertainty from the world, or at least minimize it so that, you know, you have a clear path. Now, there's limitations to this because life is kind of uncertainty. Like, that's like a universal principle, is that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow as much and all as we would like to, and we can plan and we can have algorithms that guess what's going to happen tomorrow based on like a lot of data and stuff, but ultimately we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow might punch you in the face, or it might give you a hug. When you consider the spiritual nature of things, things get a bit muddled and less linear. Although with practical spirituality, we're trying to fuse the two so that we take advantage of, you know, the systems and structures that are here, but also enter them in a mindful way, in a holistic sense, with consideration to more than just a paycheck per se. So by embracing our spiritual nature and the fact that we don't really know what's happening, we're able to navigate these ups and downs with more grace, so we can enjoy the ups, but we can also enjoy the downs. Now, what I've noticed is that there's two sides to the pendulum swinging here. And one is where you're super spiritual and you reject all money, all society, all structures and systems and whatnot. Or on the flip side, you go over here and you're super worldly. You're all about the systems, you're all about the structures. Maybe you're like a diehard capitalist, or maybe you're leaning like socialist and you think the government should look after everybody. Regardless of whether you're super spiritual and rejecting everything, or super material and thinking that everything should be given to you, or that you're entitled to everything, you'll have an issue, because in both cases you're not tapping into your autonomy as a human, as a person, perhaps as a spiritual being. And so to find yourself somewhere in the middle is what the path of practical spirituality intends to achieve. Your beliefs create your experience, not your reality. Reality is something that everybody is simultaneously witnessing, as in they see something that you also see. Your beliefs don't actually create your reality. Your beliefs create your experience. And what I mean by that is we could look outside, as I often do here in Ireland, and it will be raining. If you believe that rain is bad, rain is sad, then when you look out the window on a rainy day, it's quite likely that you're going to be sad. You're going to complain to people about how, it's a bad day outside. It's an awful day. Oh, it's, a day for the ducks. Similarly, somebody that actually enjoys the rain, or perhaps even just feels neutral about the rain, they can look out the window on a rainy day and say, oh, it's raining today, and not be emotionally affected. Their experience is neutral or maybe positive. So the difference between these two people is that one person has a belief that rain is bad, one has a belief that it's either neutral or positive. And so they're having different experiences. Now the reality is the same. Our beliefs are what cause us to experience reality as positive or negative. And while we're on this topic, no guided meditation or affirmation is going to change your life. Even my ones. I have meditations in the descriptions. They talk about confidence, abundance, and stuff like that. But listening to them isn't going to make any difference to your life. What will make a difference is by listening to a guided meditation, or doing anything really that makes you feel good and more optimistic about life, is going to prime you to take action that is going to bring you toward what you want. So if you want to be more abundant and you're listening to abundance affirmations about how it's easy to make money, well then you're more likely to go and tell somebody that you have a proposition for them to give you money in exchange for something, and then you will make money. But it's not because the meditation magically made money come into your life. It's just that you became aware of the possibility of making money and you decided to take an action aligned with that of a person that makes money. Meditation and affirmation and journaling, it's all about helping you change your beliefs to beliefs that are more supportive for your ideal vision for yourself. If you want more love in your life and you start to feel more love with yourself, then naturally when you're interacting with people, you're going to interact in a more loving way that's more receptive to romantic relationships, if that's what you're looking for. It's not that a meditation or your affirmations are going to make your soulmate appear all of a sudden. However, if you're aware of the possibility that there's a nice romantic connection for you, then if you see a beautiful person on the street, you might just have the cojones to go up to them and say, hey, want to go on a date? That's the power of guided meditation and affirmation. It's not this mumbo jumbo thing. It's just about preparing you and supporting you and taking actions that are aligned with your goals. So now that we understand that, let's take another example whilst talking about money and business. Let's say that you have a business where you want to sell your services as a content creator. Or maybe you want to sell your personal training services online. Maybe you're creating a social media profile and you want to get some followers. If you believe that a prospective client telling you no, they don't want to hire you, or that people not engaging with your social media posts is a bad thing, then if any of those things happen, you're likely to have a bad day. Your belief is creating your experience. The reality is going to happen anyway. It's going to do its thing. Sometimes it rains, sometimes people reject you. Happens. A person that believes money is hard to make is less likely to put themselves in situations where people can give them money, because it's hard. A few years ago, I really thought I could never make more than minimum wage. And you know what that meant? It meant I never asked for more than minimum wage. All I ever expected I could get was a coffee job or a job in a bar or something like that. If I wanted to make, let's say, €1,000 per day, how could I do that if I was making minimum wage? In Ireland, the minimum wage is like €12. So even in 24 hours, 12 times 24 is 144 times 2, which is 288. I could never make €1,000 in the day because there was only 24 hours in the day. So in order to make €1,000 per day, I would either need to find a new world where there was more than 24 hours in the day, or I could start asking people and the world for different opportunities that were beyond minimum wage. And so that's what I did. I started finding other ways that I could share my values. So rather than being a bartender or a barista, I could help people with their creative content for their businesses, or I could help them with their mindset and how they show up and present themselves to the world. As it turned out, people were willing to pay me more than minimum wage for that particular service. But I would never have got there if I didn't drop the belief that I can only make minimum wage. I think in the law of attraction world that people often get confused, because I certainly did. I thought that it was about avoiding things that I didn't like, when actually it wasn't about avoiding things I didn't like, but rather it was about learning how to equip myself with the tools that would allow me to navigate the things that happened that I didn't like, because inevitably things are going to happen that I don't like. I'm going to get rejected. I'm going to miss the bus. But how do we deal with that unfavorable outcome? That's what the point of our spiritual practice is to allow us to thrive in those situations that we don't like. If you've got a disempowering belief system and something unfortunate happens to you, it's very easy for you to start playing the victim, and blaming the world. But that's not going to help you to live a life of peace and calm and vitality. Because people that live a life of peace, calm, and vitality are still having to put out fires left, right, and center. They just don't make as big a fuss of it. I was listening to an interview Sadhguru was giving one time, and people asked him how he deals with problems, and I thought it was really interesting because Sadhguru was like, I have an organization with 2 million volunteers. They're all pretty much unqualified. There's more problems happening for him on a daily basis, and he can't even fire them because they're volunteers.
People ask me, Sadhguru, how do you operate with all these people? All kinds of horrible questions they're asking, they're doing this, they're doing that. I said, my life is not about them, it's about me. It's about how I am. It's about me. It doesn't matter how they are, that's their choice. But how I am is my choice, this is my way. If somebody else can decide what can happen within you right now, isn't this the ultimate slavery?
It's easy to look at someone like that and be like, oh, you just, sit and talk about spiritual stuff. But he's kind of doing stuff all the time as well. So it's a good testament to someone who's, living a practically spiritual life, you could say. I'm going to give you another example here because this is about practical spirituality. Here's a practical example. I was driving home a couple of weekends ago from a music festival, and it was late at night. I was about an hour away from my house. And I get in my car, and about halfway through my journey, it's 2 a.m. on St. Patrick's Day, and my car has just broken down on the motorway. And I just felt like I should probably document this moment. It was really inconvenient. It was cold out. It was 2 a.m. on a St. Patrick's Day, so it was a bank holiday. Garages weren't open for a couple of days, and I had to get it towed a lot of times over the next 24 hours. It was a pretty inconvenient situation. Some spiritual people might be like, oh, well, what did you do, to make your vibration be a match to your car breaking down at 2 o'clock in the morning on St. Patrick's Day? I don't know. I don't care. I don't think it's helpful to ask such a question, because when you do that, when you almost blame people's vibration for, these unfortunate things happening, it's kind of like saying that it's your fault. I don't believe that to be true. That's just my opinion. I think no matter how high you're vibrating, you're going to have issues. It's not about avoiding the issues, as I said. It's about how do you navigate the circumstance that you find yourself in. While it was an inconvenience for me to break down, I actually handled it pretty well. I called the insurance company. They sorted me out, even though I actually didn't have the insurance for it. It worked itself out. A lovely friend of mine offered to come pick me up. I got home, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. By all accounts, I didn't like that situation. However, it didn't really bother me too much because I was able to be present. I was able to appreciate the assistance that I was getting from the lovely ladies on the insurance line. I was super grateful to have been able to pull over safely and all the other things that happened. That's what I was able to focus on because I've cultivated this sort of, gratitude mindset, that my belief isn't that bad things happen and life has to suck. My belief is life happens and I get to decide how I feel about it. And so if something like that happened to me 10 years ago, it probably would have been a much bigger pain in my ass than it was as it happened a couple of weeks ago. So the takeaway here is, rather than trying to fix your vibration so that your car doesn't break down, how can you equip yourself with the tools to effortlessly float through the experience of your car breaking down so that it doesn't completely ruin your day and your life? A lot of opportunities that defy the status quo open up when you realize that your beliefs create your experience and not your reality. The reality when it comes to housing, another good practical example I've undergone myself a lot of times, is finding accommodation, somewhere to live. I've lived in Vancouver, I've lived in Boston, I've lived in Dublin, I've lived where I live now, which is also in Ireland. And all of those places have a pretty challenging housing situation, you could say. There's not that many houses and they're quite expensive. And oftentimes when I'd be, wanting to move out or whatever, people would say, oh, it's very tough. Oh, it's very expensive. You won't find anywhere. It's impossible. Now, those are all perceptions of the reality. If you decide to act based on those perceptions, then your experience is going to be, woe is me, can't afford to go anywhere, can't find anywhere nice, have to live in this place that I don't want to live. Maybe you're living with your family and you'd rather be living by yourself or with roommates or whatever. If you can hear what everyone's saying and be like, yeah, you know what? There is that many people and it seems housing is going up and it is actually quite difficult. When I go on Craigslist or on the forums, I can't see anything. That might all be true. That is the reality. But your experience doesn't have to be one where you're struggling to find somewhere. Now, in my experience, I'm not going to lie to you. It's always been quite scary. And I've always been really concerned, like, oh, is this going to work? But I put my best foot forward. A couple of years ago, I really wanted to move out. And I knew it was hard to find somewhere. But I said to myself, look, I really want to move out. I'm committed to moving out. I went and I put up a story on Instagram. And I said, look, I'm looking to rent a room somewhere. And about a week later, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who had seen this story. And lo and behold, he needed a roommate. And so I moved in a couple of weeks later. If I had just gone with the belief like, oh, it's impossible to find somewhere, I wouldn't have made the story on Instagram. And then he wouldn't have called me. About a year and a half later, I wanted to move out of that place because I wasn't happy with my situation there. For unrelated reasons. I love that guy still. However, I was still in the same situation. The housing market's even worse now. Things have got even more expensive. How am I ever going to find somewhere? And at the time, I didn't even need to move out of there, but I wanted to because it wasn't working for me. And people would say, oh, you're an idiot, letting go of that place. But I just knew that I wasn't happy there anymore and I wanted to create something different for myself. And in order to do that, I would need to take the action and I would need to take the risk. And so I did. I alerted my landlord that I was not going to be living there anymore. And then the clock was on. I had 1 month to find a new place. And again, I put up a story on Instagram and within about 24 hours, I'd found another place just down the road. And it all worked out, but I couldn't have done any of that if I didn't believe that it was possible for me to have, a favorable situation. Here's another example around friendship and relationships. If you believe that people don't like you, what are you likely to do? You're not likely to put yourself in situations where people can interact with you because the belief you have is they don't like me. So if people don't like me, I don't want to be around people because I don't want them to hurt me or attack me or call me names. You could take a person, put them in a room with a bunch of people, and then take another person, put them in the room. So we got two people in a room with a bunch of people. One person believes people don't like him. What's he going to do? He's going to sit there, probably not talk to people. The other person believes that he has a lot of value to share with the world. He's a great conversationalist. What's he going to do? He's going to talk to people. He's going to make friends. He might get a girlfriend. Two people in the same situation, different beliefs, they have a different experience, but the reality is the same. Here's a practical use case for meditation. I used to meditate a lot, like every day for multiple hours at a time. And that was the time where I was most miserable with my life because I was neglecting the other aspects of my life. I didn't have friends. I didn't have a purpose with my work. I didn't have money. And I was just really at odds with the world at that time. So it was clear to me that no matter how much I meditated, if I wasn't applying it and integrating it into my everyday life as a human here on Earth in the Western world, then I was having challenges. In a moment, I'm going to provide a very concrete example of how using meditation really helped me and my business. But first, we need to understand the unconscious and the action we take in the world. So most of the things we do it unconsciously. So there's somewhere in our mind that has all this information, and based on all of that information, that's how we react to things. So, you know, if someone knocks on the door, you just go, you don't think about that. That's a trivial example, right? Someone knocks on the door, you just go and answer it. Now, sometimes people might say something to you and it might cause you to be like, ooh, I'm so excited about that. Sometimes people might say something to you and it triggers you in the opposite direction, and you think, oh, he thinks my beard is too short. Now, the thing about meditation is it's allowing us to bring awareness to the present moment. In the present moment, things just are, right? So we're not reacting in the present moment. We're just observing it. And when we're in that space where we're just observing things, we can then choose to consciously take an action. So I call that a response as opposed to a reaction. An example of how I apply this to my own life: a few months ago, before Christmas, I was doing the biggest job I'd ever done for my company, and I was making some commercials for this company, and I had to rent a venue, I had to get insurance, I had to hire actors, I had to coordinate everybody to be there at the right time on the right day. There was a lot of upfront payment I had to make, and if this didn't work out, I was going to lose a lot of money. I had made it very clear to everybody that it was really important that we were all there at the right time, and if there was any issues, just let me know as soon as possible so that I could make alternative arrangements. Everything seems to be locked and loaded, it's all good to go, everybody's going to be on time. And then I'm sitting there the day before the shoot, just organizing the last details. I just sent all of the money to the people that I had to pay up front, and I get a text. And this, the most important person, just out of nowhere, decided that they didn't want to come. That was it, no explanation. So I was now not going to be making any money from this project. And if anything else went wrong, I would be losing a lot. So naturally, when I got this text message, my heart starts racing. I start getting really angry. I want to send the most rude text back to this person. But because, you know, I've had a spiritual practice over the years, and I've practiced meditation and self-study and compassion and all of these things, I was able to stop. I was able to pause. I left the room, I went elsewhere, and I took many breaths. I maybe took like an hour just to allow myself to calm down, because I was so scared. I was feeling insecure. I was angry. I was thinking, oh, will I just cancel everything? Will I just quit life and just go and give up on business? These were the literal thoughts that I was having. But because I was able to regulate myself, I was doing my breath work, I was, you know, tapping into my toolkit that I'd been cultivating. I was able to then respond to the situation. And honestly, I didn't have any great options, because the script that had to be learned for this was huge. So the chances of getting somebody last minute, with less than 24 hours notice, to learn this script and come up and do it was so unlikely. But I had one option that I knew of. There was one other person that had been pre-approved as an actor to do this shoot, but I hadn't even contacted him. So again, my mind, my unconscious was like, no.
You're doomed. You're a bad person. You don't make money. You don't solve problems. You're not a valuable person.
And so what I wanted to do was just give it up. I just didn't even want to contact this person. All of the voices in my head, my unconscious, which is trying to keep me suppressed rather than expanding, didn't want me to do this. But I said to myself, what is the best thing I can do? The best thing I can do is contact this person. And that's all I needed to do. So I contacted him. My mind had been thinking, oh, he's going to say no, and then I'm going to have to go to the client. I'm going to have to tell the client that I've failed, and then they're going to charge me a load of money because I failed to deliver what I had agreed to pay them. Sure enough, he said, yeah, I'm down for it. And it worked out. And all of the other stuff that my mind was saying was going to happen, all of the other beliefs that I'm not capable of taking on big projects, I just took a moment to distance myself from those beliefs, to create a new belief system, one that said, I can do this, I can overcome challenges. When people cancel last minute, I find a solution. If I'm finding solutions, I'm gonna do things that uncover the solution rather than do things that confirm I have a problem. And the project went ahead, everything went well, the client was happy, everybody got paid. And I had achieved a new milestone for myself because it was the biggest project I'd ever done. And it gave me new confidence because I was willing to go through that discomfort And that's the point of our spiritual practice, is to help us not avoid the world, but to navigate it in a way that suits us and empowers us and allows us to be the best version of ourselves. And we can see this in relationships as well, because relationships are effectively how we navigate the world. Your relationship to yourself, your relationship to the world, and your relationship to other people are all based on the unconscious beliefs that we have. So if we can identify what those are, maybe there's some disempowering ones in there, and then we can change them, then we can have a better relationship to ourselves. So, previously I was saying, no, I can't do things. I can't solve this problem. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve that. Well, by taking that moment of pause and then saying to myself, oh, David, you can do your best. Even if your best isn't good enough on this occasion, it doesn't mean you're bad. It just means that it wasn't happening on this occasion. But it didn't even get to that point because I was willing to challenge the unconscious belief that I had. And you can see this in other interactions that you might have with people. Someone might give you feedback and you might take it as, I'm useless, I'm terrible. Well, actually, it's just feedback. So instead of saying I'm useless, I'm terrible, you can say, okay, this person has a different vision to what I had. Actually, I think I can learn something from that little insight they've offered. I'm going to implement that. I'm going to add that to my skill set, my toolkit. And now all of a sudden, you've gone from being a bad person to a better person, all thanks to this feedback. That's the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Fixed is everything is black and white. Growth is everything can change. I can change my beliefs. I can change my actions to create a new experience of this reality. A lot of people love to say that the external world is a reflection of your internal world. It's like a mirror. And I do agree with that, because if you're seeing negativity on the outside, it's because that's how you're wired on the inside. And if you're seeing positivity on the outside, it's because that's how you're wired on the inside. When I see people going for a run, I used to think, oh, what a loser going for a run. Then I started to change my beliefs about running. Now when I see someone going for a run, I think, thank you so much for investing in yourself by going for a run. That's improving your mental health. That's going to make you a better father, a better partner, a better coworker, a better human. That's all because I changed my beliefs. The way I interact with people now is completely different. The way I interact with the weather, the way I interact with challenges is completely different because of how I have molded my beliefs to support me in the life that I want to live. Rather than being a victim to it, I'm just here in it and I'm doing my best and I'm witnessing other people do their best and I'm cheering people on rather than tearing them down. I think you can do the wrong thing so many times and then you'll eventually find out that it's not serving you. But rather than getting to that point and enduring all that pain, you can have a look inside and see, is this serving me? If it's not serving you, be honest with yourself and then take different actions next time. You can chant Om Ganesha 108 times and the Hindus say that it'll bring prosperity to you and your family. But just make sure you go out and tell someone that you've got a service that they can purchase off you. Because otherwise, I don't think you're being super practical with your spiritual practice. Visualize in the morning, but just make sure you go and take some action that's aligned with that visualization that you had earlier in the day. Remember, a good spiritual practice supports us in taking aligned action. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it was of benefit to you. Thanks so much for being here. Check out the description. I have a meditation bundle. I produced all of the music there. I've made the meditations. You can have a look at that. There's a newsletter down there. I also offer one-on-one mentorship. There's a form down below for that if you would like to work with me in the areas of content creation, authentic presence. I'm here for all of that. Until next time, I'm going to take off this jacket because,